Ashley, let's go to the hotline. Let's bring in the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer, the voice of the Texas High School Football State Championship games, and the voice of the Texas Longhorns. We are joined by Craig Way. Craig, happy playoffs, my friend.
Yeah, it got me to thinking. Do you and Step, when you're doing your playoff projections, do you gather in your mom's basement and just hunker down with a bunch of Funyuns and grape soda and stuff for the next 11 hours? Because I'm right there with you, by the way, on all of that, on all the nerding out that goes along with such things.
I didn't think that photo of us in my parents' basement with the grape soda and the Funyuns would get out, but okay,
yeah,
fine. The secret's out. That's what Steph and I do.
I tweeted it.
Yeah, it is. Okay. This is always a really fun time of year. Because you've got 352 win or go home games in the UIL this weekend. The brackets are out, but I'm going to put it to you this way. We've got 12 brackets, right? There's 12 brackets, 6A Division 1 all the way down to 1A Division 2. I'm going to ask you, if you are, for some reason, if there is somebody who's like, I don't have the bandwidth to pay attention to all 12 brackets. I just need one. I need one that I can follow. Give the people one bracket that you are most excited about that you would say, yeah, this is the one that you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
It'd be easy to say 6A Division 1 simply because of what's going on in Region 3. I don't think there's any. That's the old World Cup analogy, the group of death. I mean, it really is. That kind of thing. If you can get one team, I'm really curious to see which team does emerge from Region 3 and 6A D1. So that's one on my list. I think 3A Division 1 in Region 2 is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Which by the way, I think is one of the best first round matchups. I'm really curious about Grandview Rockdale.
Absolutely.
That's one that comes to mind. So there's several different. It'd be difficult to pick one, but those two are probably the two regional brackets I think that stand out to me more than any other.
You're now looking at the way that the brackets have shaped out, and I know that this is something we talked about on your show about how, and I just kind of want to reiterate it about how the brackets come out and people are saying, man, look at that really tough draw that team did, and it seems to me that Texas, this is why Texas high school football nerds like me and you and Step and a handful of others pay so much attention, not necessarily to the way the game, or not only the games that are happening in one particular season, but also to realignment, which is coming up again in February. This is when the roadmap for the playoffs gets really set. We're just kind of finally filling in the pieces here.
Speaking of being in your mom's basement, grape soda and Funyuns, my goodness, when it comes to realignment, they're talking about geeking out. You're right. I'm with you, and we did talk about that the other day, how we're seeing some of those matchups that are very, very intriguing, and the way that it really started way on back ultimately perhaps may shape how realignment goes. And these are the games that will be played, so to speak, in February when we look at all that. Which, by the way, another trickle-down effect of that would be who you schedule in non-district play. I just had Todd Dodge, the Westlake coach, on my radio show just a little while ago, and he comes into the studio every week, and we're sitting there, and we're talking about his matchup against Steele, which I think is as intriguing a 6A matchup or just about any matchup in by district, because you've got, in your final rankings, the number 12 and 23 teams in the state facing off and against one another in round one, and we're talking about that, and he said, I'll tell you this about Steele. It's not somebody I want to play in non-district, let alone by district. He goes, I won't necessarily, and I like Coach Sines, but I don't think I'll necessarily be on the phone when realignment comes out asking him, hey, you want to play in non-district? That's how tough a matchup he's viewing this one. So to your point, you're right. And it ultimately leads down the trickle down to realignment, and then who these schools are selecting to play in non-district starting in fall 2020.
It's Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer, joining us here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, #TF Today. Okay, so you brought up the Westlake and Steele game, and that is one of the premier games in the first round of the Texas High School Football playoffs. It's going down 7:30 p.m. Friday at Chaparral Stadium. this is, to me, what I love about matchups like this is you get a first-round cross-regional matchup that you've got a lot of games that are two East Texas teams or two DFW teams or two West Texas teams playing one another. Here you have two different major metro areas now duking it out in the first round of the playoffs, but it speaks to, and I don't know if you have this stat, but since 2017, when Austin, in 6A, when Austin has played San Antonio head-to-head, Austin is 13-4 in those games. I guess, is there any reason to believe that that script is going to be flipped? Because right now, it seems like, at least in recent history, Austin has had the upper hand whenever they've played their brethren from the Alamo City.
And as you know, Tep, the way the bracket works, they're not only going to, Austin will not only face the San Antonio area in round one, they're going to play them in round two, also by district and area, and so the heavy load in on that, as we know, it's heavily weighted on the accomplishments of Lake Travis and Westlake, yes, because they've been sailing through that sort of thing. So it's been the third and fourth place finishers, which in this case this year would be Hayes and Bowie, who would probably, those third and fourth place finishers are the ones that are winding up on the short end of that, the 4 losses. And I think that'll be the case again this year. I do think that Hayes really has its work cut out for them going up against Judson, and Bowie does against Clemens. So it's going to be difficult. But I do like, some of the conversation about it. And again, I'm referring to Todd Dodge talking about how it's a good enough team. He says this is a good enough team, still obviously to be a deep playoff contender. There's a phrase that I like to use at this time of year, Jeff, and I really ascribe it to by-district matchups, because you have the whole bracket. Because you've heard it, I've heard it, Ashley's heard it, a lot of people have heard it where they say, well, that team shouldn't have trouble with that. But even if they do, that team's not going to win a state championship. They'll say that team's not going to win a state championship. And what I like to say about it is, when you're playing a team in the playoffs, any round of the playoffs, the team you're playing might not be good enough to win a state title, but they're good enough to beat you that night if you're not ready. And that's the thing. On any given round of the playoffs, some team might be on a Cinderella run. They might not be good enough to win the state. But if they're on the run, they're good enough to beat you if you're not on your game. And I think Coach Dodge feels the same way about his team. I think Hank Carter feels the same thing about taking on a Larry Hill Hall of Fame coach, Smithson Valley coach team. And I think you can apply that to just about any team across the Bob Wager and Arlington Martin. What must he be thinking about matching up with Brent Davis, in San Angelo Central? When you're going up against well-prepared, well-coached teams, even if you're thought to be the odds-on favorite in a given by-district matchup, things can and do happen. We've seen it happen at this level more than any other round of the playoffs. Well,
and beyond that, to kind of put a fine point on that, if you go and you look at just last year, where you had Richardson Pierce taking out Cedar Hill, Jerry Forrest, our data partner, had Richardson Pierce as a 36-point underdog. 36-point underdog. And all it takes, and that's what I love about this time of year, because how many teams have we talked about over the course of the regular season that they take a loss and you go, well, you know what? They just had an off night. It wasn't clicking for them. They turned the ball over. They put the ball on the ground. They'll be fine, stuff like that. There's no more of that. If you have a bad game, you're hanging up pads on Saturday or Sunday. Like, that is the beauty of this time of year. And I would say, and I imagine when you talk with coaches, not the terror, but certainly it is in the back of their mind that, oh boy, we have to come out here and I don't care who we're playing. We have got to come out there and play well, because if we go down in the first round, it's basketball season on Monday.
There's no doubt about it. And it does make me wonder, by the way. I did not see Jerry's computer projection on Cedar Hill, Pierce, Roman numeral 2. So I am kind of curious to see what his readout on it is this particular year. I know that Bob Ballou, the sports anchor down here in Austin and proud Pierce graduate, goes 2 for 2, baby, it's happening, 2 for 2. And then he stopped and he said, "Is it really going to happen?" I was like, Did you really think it would happen the first time?
Yeah, well, if you're interested, the computer has Cedar Hill as just 34-point favorites, so they think the gap is narrowed. But I will tell you.
Yeah, there you go.
By the way, Bob Ballou, also a Mizzou grad, worth mentioning. I gotta shout that out. But
yes.
But that's the thing, is that it's like any given Sunday is such a cliche, but it's so true here that we're going to be in here. You're going to be on our show next Tuesday. I'm booking you right now. We're going to be on our show next Tuesday talking about the playoffs, and we're going to be talking about 2 or 3 games that we are not even thinking about right now. That we're just like, okay, like mentally we've penciled that team in the next round. It will happen. Spearman over Cisco last year. Like, there are these huge upsets. That we go back a couple of years ago. If you remember when Hondo in back-to-back years qualified for the playoffs at 1-9 or 2-8, and then knocked off a 9-1 or 10-0 team, like, that's the fun part of this time of year, is not the games that we're like. Certainly, Steele and Westlake is going to be fun. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about Katie Tompkins and Fort Bend Travis. I'm excited about a lot of games across the state. But what I'm most excited about are the games that I'm not excited about right now. Like, because it seems like on Tuesday we're going to be talking about some game that nobody saw coming.
Yep, and it's lurking out there. And I think back down in these parts to the long beloved late great baseball coach at the University of Texas, Augie Garrido, who won 5 national championships, and he used to say going into the playoffs every year, into the regionals, he said, there will be a team that will be in the super regionals that you would have had no idea would be in the super regionals is going to win a regional. Somebody is going, a 3-seed or a 4-seed out of 4 teams is going to win a regional, and you would have, and it applies in Texas high school football. You mentioned Hondo. I think it was the 2-8 team that won 2 games in the playoffs. And here they were sitting in round 3 at 4-8. But look, last year, Decatur was 4-6 going in. They make it to the Final Four. Their final record is 8-7. Think about that. A school that lost 7 ball games was in the Final Four when all was said and done. That's what this year is all about. That's what every year is all about. If you're not ready to go and teams get on a roll and they get to feeling good and free and loose, knowing they've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, and that's part of that beauty of what you talk about this time of year.
One last question for Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer. Now, I know you love your gig as the Longhorns play-by-play voice. I know you do. But you will...
especially love it on weekends when I'm going to Ames, Iowa. Let me tell you.
That's kind of where I was going with it.
You
will not be on High School Scoreboard Live on Friday night for our by-district kind of extravaganza, because you will be in Ames, ready to call the Longhorns taking on the Cyclones on at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday. I mean, I feel like I know the answer to this, but this is killing you, right?
You know what? I actually thought about going to an Iowa high school football playoff game on Friday night, and I probably would if it wasn't supposed to be like 46 below or something, So I'm probably not going to venture out into that deal. That's how much I do miss it. There's no doubt about it. I am going to definitely avail myself of some Thursday playoff action down here in the greater Austin area with Cedar Park playing McCallum. I might even venture over to Marble Falls to see Mason and Thrall. I have to get at least some quasi fix before getting on a plane to go to the barren, snow-capped hinterlands of the upper Midwest.
He is the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer, Craig Way. Follow him on Twitter at CraigWay1. Of course, listen to his fine work on the High School Spotlight down on the Horn in Austin. And, of course, hear his call of Longhorns and Cyclones coming up here on Saturday. Craig, appreciate your time, my friend, and safe travels. Enjoy the playoffs, and we will talk to you next week.
Let the postseason and all of its beautiful 714 glory begin.
Thanks, Craig. There he goes, Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer. I get choked up when I talk about Craig.
How sweet.
The Texas High School Football Hall of Famer joins us normally every Tuesday. We bumped him to Wednesday today. We appreciate his time. And he is excited. I know.
As he should be.
I know.
As everyone should be.
I know it's killing him. I know it's killing him to not be doing scoreboard, because I know this is one of his. It's like state championship week, by district week, last week, week 11, and then week 1. Those are like his favorite times. Yeah. So I know it's killing him. But I will be inadequately attempting to fill his shoes on High School Scoreboard Live, so make sure you tune in.
I hope he goes to that Marble Falls game.
Yeah, that'd
be
fun.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
they're in
close to
Marble
home
Falls.
for me.
Mason and Thrall.
Yeah.
Should be fun.